During the 1980s, Nintendo introduced their first home console in North America, the Nintendo Entertainment System. This was quite a dangerous venture considering the, at the time, recent video game market crash, but with clever marketing and design, the NES managed to become the new must-have toy for children everywhere. With landmark games like Super Mario Bros., Duck Hunt, and The Legend of Zelda, the NES is looked fondly upon by the people who had it as a kid. However, after the NES, Nintendo was never really able to recapture the same craze with their future systems. The SNES, N64, and GameCube all sold marginally less than their progenitor, but even if they didn't sell as well, there's still millions of children who got impressions of these systems during their most formative years. And as these children become adults, and they realize it's not what it's chalked up to be in elementary school, they yearn for the times of their early years where everything was magical and fun. But Nintendo knows exactly how to play on this urge to their advantage. They exploit the fact that many people grow up with one of these systems and will remember and recognize them instantly. So they have tried their hardest to milk the fact that these older consoles are from really sensitive periods of people's lives and that they're willing to pay to re-experience that. So for nearly the past 3 decades, Nintendo has rehashed and re-released tons of their legacy content in order to catch the attention of those who remember this stuff from their childhood. And no, I don't just mean stuff like the Wii Virtual Console or other efforts to make legacy content accessible to a broader audience. I mean the stuff being directly marketed as being retro, or classic, or a blast from the past, to specifically appeal to those who already recognize the source material. They wasted no time doing this, as the earliest examples cropped up during the Game Boy Advance era. The Game Boy Advance era saw many re-releases of SNES games, but that's all they were, re-releases. They weren't marketed as SNES classics or anything, but they did do this with NES games. The Classic NES Series, or Famicom Mini-Series in Japan, was a line of emulated NES games pressed onto GBA cartridges in a similar box style to the original NES Black Box games. They're just the original ROMs with no extra frills besides a little menu for multiplayer over a link cable. But alongside it, we got a Game Boy Advance SP that was NES themed, and they went all in on the theming. The gunmetal bottom, the painted ridges on top, and the same texture on the inside as an original NES gamepad makes this one of the coolest special edition systems ever to me theming-wise. But it is clear to me that they were really banking on the older crowd with this one. The TV commercial that aired just has a dude on his car, and the boxes being copies of the black box Nintendo games, art and all, with the red Classic NES Series banner. You can see what they wanted to happen here. And now you may be saying, well, how does something like this count, but not the Wii's Virtual Console? As previously mentioned, I don't think the Wii's Virtual Console counts, because it was more so just a way to play older games on a newer console rather than cherry-picking popular games and pressing them onto cartridges. The Virtual Console, and as an extension, Nintendo Switch Online, are ways to experience old games on the box you already have. The Classic NES Series just feels like, oh look, there's crappily emulated games on a portable console. Why not buy this for the novelty? Like, no one is actually going to play Zelda or Mario like this. They're just marketing tools. But Nintendo is most known for using this scheme when their business is failing and they need money quick. Specifically during the Wii U era where Nintendo was on the brink of death. NES Remix and Ultimate NES Remix were Wii U and 3DS games respectively that toy with an interesting concept. What if classic Nintendo games were clipped down into bite-sized missions played back-to-back, compounded with crazy effects that completely change the game look and feel? You get a game that is surprisingly great despite its lackluster sounding concept. Across both volumes 1 and 2 on Wii U, there are 28 NES games that all have challenges based on levels or modes from the original game. It ranges from just collecting a few coins in Mario 1 to doing a ton of tasks back-to-back, similarly to the Mario 3D World Purple Houses. For each game, it ranges from about 10 to 25 missions to complete, totaling over 150 missions. These, however, are not all too interesting on their own. It's when they get creative with it that this game truly shines. There's the remix packs, which contain 25 missions each and are a compilation/playlist of the games in the pack, just now with added effects. For one, most of the games now have a gradient background to differentiate it, which doesn't really change much, but each mission has its own special effect as well. From playing as Luigi and saving Mario in the original Donkey Kong, playing with the screen blacked out except for the character, to levels like this one which reminds me of a certain stage in Mario Wonder, or making an entire original Mario level into ice, or even just playing as other characters in games they're not supposed to be in, like Peach in Mario 3 or a Mario stage in Kirby's Adventure. This is such a fun and engaging concept that breathes new lives into these older games. I love it. I really wish they'd bring it back, but similarly to our next example, the modern Nintendo climate just does not lend itself to more experimental concepts like this one. Fantastic game, definitely one of the most underrated Wii U games. Nintendo's next attempt to recapture their old audience is by far my favorite. Nintendo really had nothing going on in the latter half of 2016. They had just managed to get through the entire Wii U lifespan still alive and just announced the Nintendo Switch. So what was Nintendo to do for the holiday season? The NES Classic Edition. A tiny little replica of the NES that contained 30 pre-installed games. The games that they chose are pretty strange. Most of them are just your standard first-party Nintendo games like your Marios, your Zeldas, and Metroids. And then there's your essential third-party games like Castlevania, Final Fantasy, Ghosts and Goblins, Mega Man 2, but not 1, or any of the other ones, and then the rest are really strange games that never really come to mind when thinking of the NES. Pac-Man, Gradius, and it also really feels like they could have cut a lot of the sequels they put on here. Castlevania 2 and Donkey Kong Jr. were probably unnecessary inclusions with such a small library of games, and the arcade games like Pac-Man and Galaga are best played elsewhere. Maybe get some of the Disney licensed games like DuckyDrawz, which is a great game with fantastic music, or even something like Tetris, which is iconic to this era of gaming. But these are small nitpicks. Overall, the library definitely contains most of the NES's greatest hits, with a bit of filler to attract people with big names they remember. They're all presented on a clean menu with fun little bits of flair and options to change how the games look. The CRT filter is not the best, but the other two modes are good depending on how much of a purist you are. However, what's not a small nitpick is the controllers. The controllers themselves feel pretty much identical to the originals except for the cord length. Like, my god, going back to it, I thought it wouldn't be that bad. But how were they expecting us to play like this? The cord is only around 3 feet, which is just not compatible with most modern setups. I guess it's more accurate to the original because you'll be sitting close to the TV like a kid again, but it sucks when you just want to play games. However, for $60 when it came out, this is exceptional value. 30 games you actually own and are not tied to a subscription with a little box and controller to go with it is crazy considering Nintendo charges $100 for a hunk of plastic. But all these shortcomings were resolved that next year with the release of the SNES Classic, the way better system in my opinion. Even though there are only 21 games, they are all fantastic and none feel like filler to me. And the inclusion of the previously unreleased Star Fox 2 is a real cool novelty. The UI is cleaner and the music is a banger. I've used it myself in the background of a few videos now. And there's even the option to change the border now, for some reason. I didn't even know this was a thing until I stumbled upon it while recording B-roll. They not only fixed the cord length and made it bearable to use, but finally included 2 of them. So all of the 2-player games finally have worth because you don't have to go buy an extra controller. Nowadays, with controller extenders and the ability to mod these things to put any game you like on them, the only real shortcoming is that they use micro USB, which literally everyone hates, especially with the at the time recently released Nintendo Switch using USB-C. Overall, I think these are great little boxes. The emulation quality is great and the controllers feel authentic. What more could you ask for? Nintendo has had pretty great success in recent years, so trying to profit off of people's nostalgia has become less common, but it hasn't disappeared completely. I think this is a bit of a stretch, but if you're a Nintendo Switch Online member, you have the option to purchase fully functional replica controllers based on older Nintendo systems. These usually come out in tandem with the associated Nintendo Classic app on Nintendo Switch, and these controllers are great. They're compatible with Switch and Switch 2, and they even show up as the actual controller themselves in the Switch UI, and they're all wireless, with most of them having USB-C charging, which makes some of these the definitive wireless option for these older gamepads. The NES controllers are an exception because they don't charge independently from the Switch. They have Joy-Con rails on the top edge so you can charge them on the Switch itself. I think this is a pretty good solution and it works with the design since they're really just rectangles. However, the other controllers pretty obviously would not work with rails on the top, so they charge independently like Pro controllers. And yeah, all these are the definitive way to experience these older games on the Switch. The Nintendo Classics apps even change when you have the matching controller connected to play sound effects from certain games like Super Mario Sunshine instead of the normal menu noises. However, the Virtual Boy headset is not the definitive way to experience it. It's the only way. Well, technically you can get the cardboard version, which in terms makes this the definitive way to experience it, but like, they're required to play no matter what. You cannot play this in docked mode, even though it would be extremely easy to do that. The fans have done it for years. I'd say that the NES and SNES controllers are actually worth picking up because they're relatively cheap for what you get and they feel authentic if you're into that. The GameCube controller being $70, the N64 being $60, and the Virtual Boy being $100 make these a tougher sell for me, but these are all premium controllers that enhance your experience when playing older games on new hardware. Nintendo's most recent example of nostalgia baiting games comes in the form of Nintendo World Championships NES Edition, a $30 digital game with a $60 physical version that came with a bunch of junk that sells for less than brand new on the secondhand market. This game got me and surprisingly my father really hyped. We were expecting something like NES Remix where the challenges would have fun spins on old games. What we got was NES Remix, without the remix. This whole game is just cut out parts of NES games that you have to do as quickly as possible, which is what most of NES Remix was, but they don't do anything fun with them. No blackout, character swaps, ice skating, nothing. It boils down to just the weakest part of NES Remix for me, which is still fun for a little while, but fails to capture my attention for long. And the craziest part is that both NES Remix games cost the same price as this one game, for way less challenges. Well, what did they add to fill up for that content gap? 2 modes. Championship and Survival. Championship has refreshing sets of 5 challenges that you play in succession. Cool, I guess. And Survival mode is just a battle royale. Last person standing wins kind of thing. This is fun until the people with Japanese characters in their names join the lobby. And that's it for the game. The physical special edition comes with some fun goodies. A replica NES cart, a pin set, and some art cards. But for $30, these seem a bit junky. And the kind of thing you get in a retro gamer box at Walmart for your dad. Like, really, Nintendo? Pieces of paper? Don't buy the collector's edition unless you just wanted the physical game like me. The other junk is not worth it. This is a game that I can see some people getting a lot out of, but for me, and seemingly most other people, it is not worth wasting your time with. Play NES Remix instead. So in conclusion, Nintendo will never let go of their older consoles. They don't want to let go of their massive successes, and this will continue to occur. When a new system comes out, oh boy, you know that Ice Climber has to make the jump. But in this overabundance and reliance on this far-gone era, I think that some great ideas have been birthed. NES Remix made a fun twist out of games that don't hold up as well anymore, and the NES and SNES classics brought an industry-wide trend to rehash old crap into cute little casings. At the end of the day, Nintendo's philosophy is doing more with less, and they've proved that they can do that more than enough times now. I hope that they will make more well-executed ideas using their older content going forward, but as I will continue to say, this company is so unpredictable all the time. So see you guys next week when this company randomly decides to shadow drop Barbie and Ghostbusters for the NES Online app.